And at 10, the Bite of 83. The Bite of 83 is the inciting moment of FNAF 4. It's the reason the whole game is happening. Not the reason for the series as a whole, mind you, but considering how the main gameplay of this game is us having nightmare fever coma dreams, this bite is definitely an important one. And while yes, it's certainly disturbing to see on screen in 8-bit, I think it would be even worse to see it as a VHS tape. The realism that we would get from even like crappy footage is so bone-shaking that you can actually like feel as if you're in the situation. This whole genre of found footage really coming from the Blair Witch Project and its incredible marketing strategy. Like, I had a whole unit on marketing like this in college, okay? It's absolutely genius. And if that sort of style of cinematography was used to make like a whole FNAF movie, or even maybe just a couple of clips, we would all be sent screaming. And watching a kid get his skull crushed by an overpowered animatronic is definitely a shocking moment already. Also, did you know that only 17% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed? You may not actually know that you're not subscribed, so be sure you check it. And if you aren't and you've watched this channel multiple times, click the button, okay? It makes me feel better about myself. And at 9, spring locking. Along the same vein as the Bite of 83 tape scenario, a found footage video from one of the missing children's spirits' point of view would be absolutely insane. Just like Blair Witch, but make it FNAF, and that's in essence what the spring locking is. Plus, I would love to get these things in more angles, especially the moment where William starts suffering for like the next 30+ years, okay? That would make me happy. This man has caused me so much suffering that I hope I get to see him suffer even more, okay? This wouldn't even be a scary VHS tape for me, okay? I'm sure the sound of the spring lock when it actually happens would spook me in the moment, but it would be quickly washed away by pleasure, because this goddamn mother hubber would be suffering right there with me. And not like in a 50 Shades of I want people in pain kind of way, but more like seeing him suffer would make me smile, okay? I'm not gonna like hit up Chica afterwards or anything like that, but I'm definitely not gonna lose any sleep over it, you know? And at 8, March of the Toreadors. If you're confused by this number, don't worry, I'm going to explain it real quick. March of the Toreadors is the name of the song that plays when you run out of power in FNAF. It's the song that plays leading up to Freddy's jump scare. It's also slowed down for the games, and it's a song released by Georges Bizet, released in 1875, and from my understanding, now in the public domain. And while that's interesting, I mainly use the name to illustrate the part of the game that I'm talking about. Having a tape or a Blair Witch style video of you running out of power would be absolutely terrifying, okay? I can imagine it. And if it was made in a realistic way instead of being something like FNAF VR or otherwise with just like some filters thrown on top of it, if it was actually real, it would be terrifying. Okay, that's the kind of thing that would give people nightmares, and actual nightmares, not like the ones that I have where I just wake up panicking, then I'm like, oh wait, no, like actually scary. And at 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus your son would be alive, so yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. And at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But because like this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press. It's just stupid. Like if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know, like this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what? I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually like accomplish the closing of that. So like the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for spring lock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a spring lock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, the Afton ending. Okay, well, if you don't want to have the whole security breach game be a VHS, okay, how about the canon ending, or the Afton ending as some call it. The canon ending to this game is some of the most insane luck that Gregory experiences in his whole time at the Pizzaplex. This sort of thing is like catnip for these types of videos. I mean, when have you like looked at one of these or like watched a found footage thing and thought, wow, this is so unlucky? Never. Okay, they always somehow end up having like lucky thing after lucky thing happen to them. So let's take us falling into the room and then fighting off these robots. Just make it a damn VHS tape. Since honestly, trying to do the whole of Security Breach may be a little more ambitious than most people could reasonably expect, but that's just kind of the person I am, though. I end up thinking of cool things after cool things, so then I add them to the project, and then it inevitably becomes too ambitious that now it seems like a mountain I have to climb, so I give up. But then I also don't want to make the mountain smaller because all of these things would be so cool and I've already thought about them and want to include them. So yeah, it's happened with literally every project that I've had in mind, and it sucks. So how about this one? We just cut it down to the Afton ending. Is that better for anyone who can actually animate and do it properly? I hope so. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Claw. Elizabeth Afton getting grabbed by Baby is one of the most terrifying moments in the series. Possibly because Crying Child might have seen it, which would explain the mouths on the Nightmare animatronic stomachs. However, if we were to see a tape of this moment from Crying Child's perspective, whether that detail be canon or not, oh my freaking god, that would be so utterly terrifying that we may actually, I might actually freeze, okay? I don't know how to explain why a kid hiding in the bushes while his sister is grabbed by an animatronic claw while trying to get ice cream would be so shocking and horrible, except for how I just did it. But especially considering that this kid ends up turning into an absolute psychopath after this, and by that I mean Elizabeth, not Crying Child, but still, okay? The found footage that's of someone hiding for some reason is always scarier than someone who's in the middle of the action, because I feel like if you're hiding, you can point the camera at the scene, but if you're filming it and you're in the action, you're just filming your feet as you run away because you're focused on running away, not filming it. Plus, in general, this is just a up thing to watch happen, be it in person or on video. And finally, in at number 1, scoopening. Okay, now, I know that you may be mad and may think that this is a stupid point, but hear me out, okay? The scooper may seem like a weird but normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but like with the blueprint revealing how this thing actually works, seeing this in third person from found footage would be absolutely atrocious. This thing can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, which is a molten metal possessed by souls, and it keeps a person alive after removing their insides, replacing it with robot parts, and then having those robot parts leave that body. In essence, just making that person a walking case of flesh. Do you really want to watch that happen from a security camera? Or even just watch it happen to someone else, okay? No. In Sister Location, we see it in first person, okay? All we see is just basically like a mighty machine digging into our body. But like from the outside looking at Michael, we would see so much more. And if it's from Ennard's perspective, it would only be worse. And it's at hints. Once we started looking for lore hints and clues in more than just the games, we knew that we were going to be in for some extreme buffoonery with this series. I mean, like, looking in the game files is one thing, okay? People do that all the time, especially for popular games. But once we had to start looking in the source code for Scott's different websites, and then everything that followed that, we knew that there was nowhere safe from his tricks. We learned multiple things thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files. We know that after Sister Location, Baby gets into a fight with the rest of Ennard and gets kicked off the island because of the source code. We got so many 8s and 7s before the release of FNAF 4 that we found a real-life pizza place on Google Maps, and we were looking so deep we ended up finding the original names to files to find the name of Vanny before it was even released. So yeah, needless to say, it's certainly been a wild ride since we saw those 8s and 7s in the source code. And then it only got more intense. Can't wait to see where this series goes with the hints next. Oh, probably just scrolling them on the inside of my eyelids. In 9, hiding spot. How the absolute living hell did anyone end up getting away with this? Like, the smell of rotting bodies inside of animatronics would ruin the atmosphere. The heat of the animatronics moving as well, that would just speed up the decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. And they even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood and mucus and were, quote, smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with this wasn't important for the plot of life, he would have been cut instantly. Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids. How about we look in these leaking animatronics? Because, you know, they're leaking blood and mucus and smelling like death. Oh, wow, look at that. There's bodies here. We found those missing kids. Afton, you're under arrest. Boom. Like, instantly. I don't get how this wasn't an open and shut case. Like, straight up. He was so goddamn stupid. Like, he shouldn't have made it past the first game. His plan is a whole dumpster fire of bad ideas. But the entirety of the series would be different had he not hid the bodies in the animatronics. So, well played, I guess, William. And at 8, betrayal. Top 10 worst anime betrayals, but it's FNAF. In Sister Location, we thought we finally had a nice animatronic. The first nice one. Like basically a prototype of Glamrock Freddy. Baby was giving us tips on how to survive. She helped us get through Belora's gallery. She really seemed like she wanted us to live. But then, what do we get for trusting her? Scooped and stuffed just like a Thanksgiving turkey. Sounds like my last relationship. That sounded weird. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. I meant, like, that's what we get for trusting her. This was probably one of the most brutal things to happen to a character in the entirety of the series. And it's all because we trusted Baby. Okay, she made us feel safe, gave us confidence, prevented us from getting killed, only to use our body as a skin suit and then fill us full of Ennard's animatronic parts, and then also just leave Ennard not even a game later. Okay? This is why I don't trust Glamrock Freddy. Baby is legit one of the reasons that I have trust issues now, and that's saying something. Like, holy damn. I could have sworn Glamrock Freddy was going to do the exact same thing. Like, lead us down to Afton, then pull a psych. I've been working for this dickbag of a Mother Hubbard this whole time. Time to die. Ha ha! But he didn't. However, thanks to Baby, I still think that he's going to do the long con and that he's going to betray us in the next game. And without that, then we wouldn't have thought that like Michael is a robot and then the whole there's 2 purple guys now. Okay, it was an important moment, okay? And at 7, Midnight Motorist. While the gameplay of Midnight Motorist itself is pretty simple, the intrigue comes from the hidden lore that we get from this game, all of which is fairly well known to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure everyone knows it, actually. You know how it's called later that night in the files, and the secret area at the bottom that leads to the whole other section with the Mustard Man and whatnot? Okay, good. Glad we're caught up. So, imagine that whole Mustard Man minigame section as a VHS tape. That would be pretty damn freaky, right? I mean, like, especially given the location and the fact that this is a house alone in a clearing in the woods, okay? Very Blair Witch Until Dawn kind of location there, alright? And even if you want to just use the gameplay of the minigame itself, that's still pretty terrifying. And you know what? Maybe even more so. I've said this multiple times, but the idea that anyone we pass on the street could have just walked away from a gruesome murder is something that is, I think, at least, is one of the scariest realities we all face. Like, I've made jokes like you're only alive because every human you've seen has chosen not to kill you, and in reality that has way more truth to it than you would think. And this VHS tape would be like any other. But considering how later that night is commonly seen as later in the night William killed Charlotte, I think the implications of it would be pretty horrifying. And at 6, security breach. All of it. Considering how there are cameras all over the Pizzaplex that we are able to tap into somehow using our Fazwatch, I think it's fairly safe to say that this would be a realistic idea. And honestly, I think all the security breach moments could work as a tape. I mean, like, come on, okay? Especially when Vanny distorts the camera around her and makes herself invisible to Freddy, okay? An invisible psycho bunny out for blood, chasing a kid around a giant Chuck E. Cheese mall for 6 hours? Tell me that doesn't already sound like a horror movie. Especially when you throw in like the low quality video that is associated with old security cameras and VHS tapes, okay? Slap on top of that some well-placed static at intense moments, and boom, you have yourself the next Paranormal Activity series. I just think that the concept of security breach as a whole would do well with this style of video. But if you want me to be more specific, give me a minute and I will be. Halfway through into number 5, Finding Springtrap. Now, this is a moment that we actually didn't get to see, but the guys who opened Fazbear's Fright in FNAF 3, they found Springtrap in that back room, right? So why not have a tape of them actually finding the body? That would be some freaky shit, man. Especially considering how we know exactly what happens because of this discovery. The pathetic fallacy of these guys not knowing what they've done, but everyone watching knowing what this leads to already creates a pretty damn compelling feeling. But then throw in the horror and the fact that we know it's William Afton Hartley clinging to life because he's stuck here until the one you should not have killed decides to let him go, and it just gets worse. But they also think that it's an animatronic that somehow just still works. So yeah, definitely something that would be an insane tape. Add to that the fact that we haven't actually seen this before, and I think we all love it. And at 4, Security Puppet. Another minigame from FNAF 6 that I think would make an incredible video, Security Puppet. And I mean like the whole finding Charlotte dead outside in the rain thing, not the whole do nothing until the final round because the green bracelet is stuck outside thing, okay? Because genuinely seeing this from the puppet's POV with like the green bracelet being highlighted and maybe even the only thing that is actually in color on the screen would make this so much more impactful, okay? The pain that the viewer would feel as we slowly crawl out to her bleeding body would be insane. And imagining like the sound effects of like faint screaming or like crying from Henry that we could also have in the background that gets slightly louder as we crawl, I'm actually getting chills right now. It doesn't even need to actually look realistic. You could do this in Source Filmmaker, and as long as the atmosphere is right and you have the sounds right and whatnot, it would be absolutely horrifying. Okay, I would hear those screams as I'm falling asleep, and I'd probably never be able to sleep again. Just saying. And ultimately, in at number 2, FNAF 4. Not only is the spring locking important, and on top of embarrassing, but the next game, FNAF 4, is one of the most pivotal moments in the series. After what Scott intended to be the original end to the series after 3 games, he came out with a 4th after the community was disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare. So lo and behold, we get the Nightmare Animatronics, and the story of Crying Child, who still doesn't have an official name, since the N in Evan is a stretch, and the whole Gregory thing is still up in the air. However, this kid really changed the way we looked at the series. from thinking that William was a grieving father to, after looking closely, that he instead designed these animatronics to kill, and the mysteries of this game. What's inside the box? Who's the one who says I will put you back together? And really, what does it mean? It's been like 6 years after the game's release, and we've still been unable to definitively answer those questions. And that's why the series has lived on for so long, okay? The amount of mystery and intrigue is just too much for us as humans to ignore. As humans, we want answers. It explains a lot about society. But let me tell you, those who don't worry about FNAF have it made. I guess ignorance is bliss. They don't have to do this. And finally, into number 1, live stream. After MatPat's big FNAF 4 theory relating to dream theory and how the entire series might be a dream, something later disproven by Scott, so thank God for that, there was still a series of cryptic messages that made us think a whole load of crazy for a while. And you know what? Maybe we were right at the time, but as the series grows, so does the story. It's like a living organism adapting to changes in its environment. Why would Toy Chica be missing her beak? And 4 games, 1 story could have made sense back then, but now we're not entirely sure if they have an impact anymore, since it's definitely more than 4 games. At the time, we thought that this meant that crying child was Michael Afton, something that honestly kind of made sense, in the weird FNAF way of making sense. But now, we've decided that it's not the case, and honestly, I think that this is the way the series will stay. Not about the Mike thing per se, but specifically that we will never know what's really going on, and that the story will instead be what we as fans make it instead of what Scott might have originally intended. Sure, he can help gesture us in a better direction that would make more sense with what he wanted and what he has planned, but I don't think that we'll ever know what Scott originally thought the story of the series would be. Hence why when Dawko asked him which FNAF 3 ending was canon, Scott said he wouldn't answer. And at 10, killing where you eat. The biggest mistake that William ever made, in my personal opinion, and I will say this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his restaurant, okay? It's unknown if this was always his intention, but like, come on. Who would think that this is a good idea? Like, who in the comments wants to come at me and try to justify killing your prime demographic in your place of business, okay? Dealers don't kill their customers, okay? Mechanics only bleed their clients dry of their money, not their blood. So like, why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally, go anywhere else. This is just like, it's basically killing in your house and then like calling the cops and saying, hey, I killed someone in my house. It's putting unwanted attention and scrutiny on literally everything you do just so they can try to catch you. Like, you even end up getting banned from going back into your building when the investigation is underway. And it's not like it helped your business. You had to close the first location because of this, resulting in you having to open another one that killed your daughter. So, yeah, pretty embarrassing if you ask me. All you had to do was go to the park or some random alleyway or like a laser tag place, and then boom, your kids would be alive, you'd be harder to suspect, and you'd be rich from your business, because honestly it was a good idea, but you're done. And at 9, Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was also one of the most embarrassing things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a mistake, because like the one you should not have killed is kind of keeping him alive after all, although it's still unclear if they're doing that currently or not. But they're doing it as a way to make him suffer. So I feel like getting possessed by a child is pretty embarrassing. I mean, that, like, depending on the angle that you want to like look at, that I'm going with it's embarrassing. If I was possessed by a child, I would be embarrassed. I don't think I am, hopefully. But even if he does like consider this a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which in my opinion she's not, but like killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that likely ended with Cassidy, that's dude. Come on, we already talked about it. You killed in the wrong place. It's embarrassing. So, you know what? If you don't want to count Cassidy as the embarrassing mistake, count the missing children's incident as that mistake, alright? Just count it whatever way you want. It's on the list, deal with it. And at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into absolute freaking madness. In the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes you to disassemble them and release their spirit. In both universes where William kills Charlotte, it comes back to bite him in the since Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the book specifically, unbeknownst to her at least, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost. But it was also revealed that the animatronic is also Baby. You know, the baby animatronic that we all know and love? Yeah, who can switch between her forms at will, and then the human version doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books is also Baby, which is also in the games William's daughter. And at 6, the one you should not have killed. The introduction of the one you should not have killed is probably the most confusing character ever. While we have had more confusing moments, the argument over who the one you should not have killed, aka the vengeful spirit isn't over. But no matter if it's Cassidy or Crying Child, the vengeful spirit was introduced as an explanation as to why Afton always comes back. A spirit that was possessing him and keeping him alive, which I called. I called that Afton was still living in the Springtrap suit, but all of you didn't believe me. And here we are. He was alive in the suit. And even after that, for some reason, you don't believe that I'm right about Crying Child being the one you should not have killed instead of Cassidy, despite my over, 350 different videos on FNAF. Okay, I feel like I know enough about this series, especially with the calls that I've made in the past. Okay, I was one day off on the Security Breach release date, one day, and you still don't think I know enough about this series. Come on, people, come on, just accept me as your overlord and this would all be so much easier. Halfway through into number 5, Dream Theory. The actual concept of dream theory is nothing new to any series, really. The idea that everything we've seen could just be a dream is possible with any form of media. But when it comes to FNAF, this idea made a lot of people upset, and I guess that's understandable. With everything being a dream, it in essence makes the lore worthless. So the hours and hours people spent trying to work it out being pointless if it was true. However, if this was the intention, we never knew, since in FNAF 4's ending we see a locked box with the now infamous line of perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And that for now has been around 6 years. Currently, according to Scott, from what I've seen, nobody has actually solved FNAF 4 yet, but then again, I don't think Scott knows who we are, so maybe I have and he just doesn't know it. But with the game surrounding a kid in a coma who's experiencing nightmares after getting chomped on by a seriously overpowered animatronic jaw, I think us getting the idea that this could be indicating that everything is a dream is a little on par for what the actual course was at that point. We were so invested at this point that we actually started scanning the source code, and again, found a real-world pizzeria thanks to the multiple 8s and 7s, and I still don't know if that was accidental or not. I don't think anyone does. I don't know if Scott actually knew about that or not. Maybe he was the one who put that on Google Maps. And at 4, Soft Reboot. The soft reboot the series is undergoing at the moment, and more so at the time that Help Wanted was released, was something that we had never seen before, well, at least in the FNAF series, and seemingly started the trend of characters from games becoming sentient and trying to escape the confines of games and come into the real world. That, you know, we see play out through the FNAF games after Afton becomes sentient code. But even then, the next game seems to throw that idea away while we're keeping what happened there, or at least in the mobile port canon with Princess Quest. It's a real issue, okay? The real issue comes from the next soft reboot they attempted to do in Security Breach again, with Afton now having a physical form. Again, his death being a mystery, and the game setting up the next owner for wherever they want to go. And while I understand that, I wish you could have just given it one path. You know, at least just killed William off for us permanently. I'm still upset about that.
And at number 10, in-universe games. The knowledge that Scott Cawthon's in-universe counterpart has made games about the Fazbear restaurants in the FNAF universe has been driving us, or more particularly me, crazy ever since we learned about it in Help Wanted. Literally Help Wanted's opening scene. What games are the ones he made? Were they the original FNAF games? Does anything we've done up until this point in the games actually matter? Well, it seems like Security Breach might have actually at least kind of explained it with a single machine known as Mangle's Quest, which, if you don't remember, is one of the mini games that you had to play in order to unlock the good ending of FNAF 3 and the Happiest Day minigame. I guess Technically though, that has even more implications. If to release the souls of children, we had to actually like glitch out an actual game, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm not talking about that now. Unit 9, Toy Animatronics. Has Security Breach actually wrapped up the story of the toy animatronics? It's possible. I mean, this idea has been out there for a while, really ever since Glamrock Chica was revealed. But could the toy animatronics actually have been reused or repurposed into the Glamrock animatronics? Or at least parts of them being used. And actually, it would make sense, considering how these animatronics seem to also have like a security database. Oh my god, wait, no, they actually do have a security database. Freddy straight up pulls Gregory out of his stomach and then like looks at him and says, I cannot locate you. There's no profile for you. So yeah, they have a security database. They don't like seem to have one, they actually have one. Just like the toys from FNAF 2. They would scan a criminal database to see if anyone was willing to commit murders. But with facial recognition and conveniently the same glitches that allowed them to misidentify William, allowing them to not identify Vanny, since Freddy is unable to see Vanny without Roxy's eyes. Which begs the question, could the other animatronics see her? Or like, is it just Roxy? And if the last versions of the toy animatronics were so terrible at their job, because I mean, like, at this point they know they were, and I guess like maybe they were like, oh yeah, no, it's because William programmed them, so that's why they were terrible. But like, still, why would you reuse that? Why would you risk it again? That seems like a absolutely abysmal idea. And at 8, Alligator Mask. Now, my original idea was that the man in room 1280 took place after FNAF 6's fire, and that's how William became Glitch Trap. However, it's seeming more and more that the man in room 1280 actually takes place after Security Breach. After all, I mean, like, it would explain why the one you should not have killed is wearing an alligator mask, since it would be Monty if this does take place after, since there wasn't really an alligator animatronic beforehand, and there's no way that an alligator mask is Happy Frog, okay? Just saying. And considering how Freddy runs off with Gregory at the end of the game, Monty would be left to run the show. I mean, we actually like see this happen in a newspaper article at the end of the good ending. The one where you go through the loading dock that required level 7 clearance, and you just like, Gregory somehow drives a van with Freddy and then uses the battery to jumpstart Freddy. Yeah, that ending, we see that since Freddy's gone, Monty ends up running the show. And Vanessa even uses this as a threat to try to convince Freddy to give us up when he's in parts in service. You know, when his like head is disconnected and we have to reconnect it. So, a kid wearing a Monty mask after the canon ending of Security Breach would explain a lot. It would make a lot of sense. It would also explain the reason why Afton's body isn't burnt horrifically like it's supposed to be in the Man in Room 1280 in FNAF 9, because like that he hasn't done that yet. I mean, it also explains why it's called Burn Trap. At least we know he didn't escape the FNAF 6 pizzeria like everyone thought he had though. Right?
And at 6, Henry, why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences, okay? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That was probably pretty obvious to him, especially since he already suspected you were up to something, and he took extra care to protect his daughter, and then she still died. That is 100% the superhero origin story that Henry needed. A vengeful father if I have ever seen one, and he didn't even need vengeance when he was putting that green bracelet on his daughter. So then, you know what? Then he's after you, or it seems like it, and you don't kill him next? Like, killing Henry would have done so many wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops are already suspicious of you. As long as they can't find a body, they've already said that, like, they can't arrest you without a body, apparently. So, if they won't put you away for 5 missing kids, they won't put you away for a missing father as well. Especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you're the killer. And I mean, like, I don't know, that's kind of up in the air, and like, you'd rather not go to trial if you were being charged with murder, but still, without a body, there can't really be any forensic evidence. So if you just, I don't know, throw it in a wood chipper. Again, these videos are going to be the reason I get hauled into the police station. Halfway through into number 5, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about his own daughter. I get it, because she's a mistake. Actually, we don't know. She might be. I don't know how William thought that, like, this was a good idea, though. Like, I feel like this guy, like, trying to brainstorm how to capture kids more efficiently. And, like, he hadn't even started killing at this point. He's like, oh, I know. I can make a robot to lure them in with ice cream and then grab them where they're close. Okay, so what's it gonna look like? Oh, let's call my daughter and ask for some design tips, you know? Then like, Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and going directly against her father's instructions like a kid to go see the robot. That's basically perfect in her eyes. William, why? Why did you think that this wasn't going to happen? You had to lock your child in his room so that he wouldn't go to Freddy Fazbear's fucking pizza. And you think that your daughter isn't gonna walk up to an animatronic, especially at the age where they want to piss you off. And they're also seemingly loaded because you own a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dad when they say to not touch a giant robot that was made to appeal to kids? Yeah, that's gonna work. God, you're a special kind of stupid. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It is truly embarrassing, bro. Okay? All you needed to do was have a blacklist and say, don't kill these kids. And you would have been fine. But no. In it for fun times. Now, there's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping you could shed some light on those. Well, she can dance, she can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream. Yeah, with all due respect, those weren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. Yeah, that classic line of William seemingly being interrogated by the police that plays the first time you open up Sister Location is definitely showcasing how embarrassingly stupid this guy is. The cops know what these animatronics are doing and are capable of, and what they were designed to do, so they instantly end up being even more suspicious of him. And considering, like, the circumstances, we can also assume that Elizabeth is inside the robot. Like, there's no way that they confiscated the animatronics before they had to close Circus Babies. So she is definitely still inside the robot. So they're definitely keeping a closer eye on him, and his daughter's in a robot that they're asking him about, okay? Bro, yeah, why? Designing the fun times as killbots before seemingly you actually had the rest of the FNAF roster, definitely an embarrassing moment. Especially considering how one of the fun times was meant to symbolize your dead wife. I don't wanna know how you were trying to fill that one with souls, bro. Leave me out of it.
Getting close to the end into number 3, spirits. One of the major issues with FNAF for some is the inconsistency of the whole spirits are real, but they aren't the ones doing the actual possession thing. Since in FNAF 3's minigames, we see the physical spirits of the original 5 missing children, and then in Fazbear Fright, we learn that agony and emotions are what actually cause possession in this world. So how could there be those actual physical spirits if it was just their emotions causing the suits to move? And while originally we might have just chalked it up to maybe there being other emotions or even just like William hallucinating, with Security Breach and specifically the rooftop ending, I think we have a better idea. Since in the rooftop ending we end up seeing Vanny dead on the ground and then we unmask her and it reveals Vanessa. And then a couple seconds later we see Vanessa looking down at her body on top of the building, just watching herself. Yeah, that's definitely not a problem at all. Thanks, Scott. This could mean, though, that there are only spirits when the person regrets what they've done. Since the kids in the original suits terrorized so many others, maybe they ended up actually feeling bad about it, even though they couldn't really control it because it was their emotions controlling the suits. But maybe they still felt bad about what was going on, and then that's why they had spirits. Regret. It's a powerful thing. But ultimately, in at number 2, the Blob. Okay, so what I'm talking about here, as opposed to the FNAF 6 ending, which I mentioned before, is not what the blob is meant to do, but something else entirely. Here, I'm explaining that the blob in this game actually explains the blob of tentacle goo that comprises Baby, introduced in the final few Fazbear Frights books. This blob actually explains why that whole thing was introduced and explored and why it happened. Because it's setting up yet another f***ing antagonist for the future of the FNAF games. As long as the next owner of the IP wants to go in that direction, that is. Because now, they got 3. They can go with William, they can go with Vanny, or they can go with the Blob, or hell, they can go backwards and make an entirely new character for all we know. And even if they don't want to go that way, they can wrap up William's story first and then move on to someone else. Like, I mean, Scott and Steel Wool did leave a death animation for William unused in the files, and I doubt that it's going to be used for a potential DLC. Because first we need a few updates for the game. But there's no way that they wouldn't capitalize on an obscure ending like that for another game. Because, like, there's no way that they would officially kill William off. I want it to happen, but it's not gonna happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott's, like, been working with the person taking over for the endings of this game to see which one fits where they want to go next the best. Hence why there are so many endings. Scott was like, okay, pick one. Actually, no, I doubt that. I feel like Scott was like, this is the true ending. You gotta work with this. But here are other ones to help guide you. And finally, into number 1, the Help Wanted ending. Now, while the whole glitch trap shouldn't be possible thing is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to explore, I think that Security Breach, and more so the Princess Quest ending, perfectly explains the Help Wanted ending. You need to beat the first game, then you beat the second game, and then you choose the Vanny ending, and instead of pushing the button to disassemble Vanny, you play the third Princess Quest game. This will result in the player actually saving Vanessa as long as you beat the third one, and then finding Vanny's mask on the floor. But how did that really save Vanessa, you ask? Well, actually, it's fairly simple. Help Wanted. If you've seen any of my videos where I discuss the endings of Help Wanted and how when we complete that puzzle in the final battle we get locked behind a door, you'll know that I said that that's us being distracted so that William has an opportunity to actually shut us away in our own mind. So if we do the thing that we do to actually beat him when he's attacking us, we're just distracted enough so that he wins even more. And that he does. But this Princess Quest ending actually really proves me right. Since the end of Princess Quest 3, you open a giant door with a large keyhole surrounded by glitching cracks and purple stuff. And in Help Wanted, we get sealed behind a giant door with a large keyhole with cracks around it and even handprints on the inside. This with the obvious connection via Princess Quest to Help Wanted, because, you know, Princess Quest was the mobile version of the 16 tapes. This is us releasing the player from Help Wanted, who consequentially ends up being Vanessa from the wall that Afton set up, since after this door closes we see her mask on the floor, and even sit on a hill with Vanessa and Freddy's head, which is a whole other can of worms, which makes MatPat think that Gregory is crying child, Freddy is Mike, and that Vanessa is Elizabeth Afton, which we've been calling for months. I feel like we've been calling that for a year, but...
In at 9, blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of and what they were designed to do. And you want to know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the fun times as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife, and the other one ended up killing your daughter.
And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was actually a pretty dividing point among FNAF fans and theorists alike. Some thought that it was Afton in Hell, others thought that it was a coma, but we now have a definitive answer. Assuming it does take place between Security Breach and FNAF 6, as the release of the games would indicate, it would actually mean that Ultimate Custom Night is what Burn Trap is seeing while unconscious in the recharge station. Perhaps it's him keeping himself from dying in the recharge station, like a mind kind of fight thing, like whenever a main character dies in a show and they have to fight back to get to their body. Yeah, that kind of thing. And we don't actually see him wake up until he beats 50-20 mode, and then he comes after us like we see in the true ending to the game. So basically, we get down there, and as soon as we activate it, he beats 50-20 mode. This actually makes sense given that Scrap Trap is in Ultimate Custom Night, since this would sort of be like a nightmare sequence with Scrap Trap serving as what William is dealing with in these moments, or I guess his misdeeds, or his wickedness made of flesh, as Nightmare puts it. But the whole aftermath of the FNAF 6 fire, and then returning to that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, either because of like Charlotte being there and he wanted to kill her, or maybe just some other thing that Henry had to do to actually lure Afton back. We don't actually know what that was, but either way, he had to deal with it, and it makes sense as to why now. And at 6, Brothers. Now this is something that MatPat actually talked about in his recent FNAF Theory video that went out on January 1st, 2022. However, this is something I have been calling for ages. Ever since we learned Gregory's name, ever since that Funko statue was leaked, I have been saying that their relationship is very brotherly. It was awfully similar to Michael and the Crying Child. Especially when the older brother is represented by, or maybe even now possessing, the Glam Rock Freddy animatronic, when it was a version of a Freddy animatronic that killed his little brother in the first place. And before you get all mad at me saying, oh no, that was Fredbear. Fredbear is a version of Freddy, okay? Go away. Fredbear is literally a version of Freddy. Back off. The fact that this is so solid after the game comes out, it kind of explains that what happened actually did happen. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that now we're trying to make up for it, to reconcile. And if Gregory ends up actually being a robot crying child, you all owe me a coffee. Because I've been calling that one for ages too. I have been saying that for so long, and so many people got mad at me. But look at this, MatPat says it, and I saw no hate comments on the top, at the top comments, okay, on that video. I saw no hate. Halfway through into number 5, the FNAF 6 Fire. FNAF 6 acted as the narrative ending for many animatronics. The fun times in Molten Freddy, the puppet inside of Lefty, Scrap Baby, and even us as Michael Afton. But the secret true ending to this game actually shows us the aftermath of this fire. We see the aftermath of FNAF 3's Fire in Sister Location's final cutscene, with Springtrap popping out of the ruins of Fazbear Fright, and this time around we learn about the third last game's fire in this ending. Since, as MatPat pointed out in his recent theory, as well as many people have pointed out in the comments of various videos and Reddit posts, the pizzeria you're in for this secret ending looks a hell of a lot like the one that we make, or like the base for the one we make in Pizzeria Simulator. And since it burns down, basically it doesn't matter which one you made, this is what it would burn down to. Which honestly explains why William was in the recharge station. Okay, they didn't actually have to move his body. Which actually, it makes sense. Finally, something in this godforsaken series makes sense. Something makes sense in a FNAF game, praise the Lord. But This also means that he hasn't been taken to the hospital yet for the man in room 1280 to occur. This idea that this is the FNAF 6 pizzeria also ends up solidifying when you see that the blob is like the new Ennard, with all of the different animatronics from FNAF 6 present when you actually like take a look closer and even like clip inside of it. There's a video for it. Many people have done this on YouTube, but you can like see the Scrap Baby mask, you can see the Puppets mask. Yeah, combine this with, you know, the fact that Springtrap is here, or I guess Burn Trap or Scrap Trap, whatever, okay? The fact that William in some form of animatronic Golden Bunny is here, and you get an explanation for what happened after the FNAF 6 fire.
Getting close to the end, into number 3, animatronics. Like, how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important for the plot, he should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone-crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? And finally, in at number 1, the platinum rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? If it's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, now I'll do it here. But, like, come on. Who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The platinum rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it.